Attention all men's ministry leaders. We are excited to announce the first ever No Regrets National Leadership Summit, April 26th and 27th at Elmbrook Church in Brookfield, Wisconsin. This incredible 2-day summit will give you the strategies and tools needed to take your ministry to men to the next level. You'll hear from nationally renowned pastor, author, and speaker Steve Carter, along with Steve Sonderman and many of the seasoned leadership trainers of the No Regrets team. The National Leadership Summit is the perfect place to bring your entire team of leaders to hang out together, learn together, and envision the future of men's ministry at your church together. Register today and take advantage of our lowest pricing option beginning at just $89 per person. Don't miss the No Regrets National Leadership Summit, April 26th and 27th at Elmbrook Church in Brookfield, Wisconsin. For more information, visit noregretsmen.org and sign up today. We'll plan to see you in April. Welcome to the No Regrets Leadership Podcast, where leaders are empowered to equip and disciple men.
Welcome, everyone, to the No Regrets Leadership Podcast. Each week, we encourage and equip leaders to disciple the men in their circle of influence. Our goal here is to explore the very best ideas and practices in the area of discipleship and ministry to men. My name is Troy Thomas. I'm the co-host today, along with founder and executive director of No Regrets Men's Ministries, Steve Sonderman. Hey, Steve.
Troy, it is so good to be back together, and really had a blast last week talking about, just what is Christian leadership, and really looking forward to today.
Yeah, so we're continuing our series. We're calling it Leadership 101, and we're taking some time to step back and take a look at this topic of leadership. It's so important. Since we call this podcast the No Regrets Leadership Podcast, we thought it was kind of a good idea maybe once in a while to talk about leadership. And most of our listeners would call themselves leaders. And so we're going to spend a few weeks chatting about leadership, what it is, why it's so important, why it's so very vital in what we do, some models, some methods, some practices, and just the concept of leadership. And all the while we do that, we want to understand and stay anchored in the servant leadership of Jesus. This is part 2 of Leadership 101. Last time we looked at the definition of leadership, what it is and why it's so important. And we said there's a definition that we like from Howard Hendricks. And he said, a leader is a person who influences people to accomplish God's purposes. And so we spent some time talking about that last week and drilling down into that. And as we go a little deeper this week, we want to talk about 7 qualities of effective leaders, 7 qualities. I'm reminded here, Steve, of that great 20th century philosopher and poet, Yogi Berra. Have you heard of him?
Oh, yeah. Great stuff.
Yeah, Yogi said, baseball is 90% mental and the other half is physical. Steve, I don't know if you agree, but I think leadership is 90% your character and the other half is your methods. That makes sense?
It truly does, especially if you're going to be talking about Christian leadership, and really, I'd say any leadership.
Yeah.
That's really true.
It seems to me we spend way too much time developing the methods and the practices and the models, and way too little time developing our character into the likeness of Jesus. So important for leadership.
Yeah.
So, Steve, as we get into it, let's talk about that. Why is it so important for a leader to focus on character first over methods?
Well, I think because it's the model that we see in Jesus, is that Jesus is our model for leadership, and his leadership flowed from who he is. And the same is true for us, is that effective leaders, when you look at leaders across the ages, and biblical leaders and leaders in the world, what you'll discover is the ones that were most effective were the leaders who led from who they are, because who you are speaks much louder than what you do. And if you want to continue to grow in your leadership, be more effective in your leadership, and have a wider leadership, then it's about who you are as a person, and that has to do with our character. And we see that in Jesus, and then we've seen it just in throughout the ages as well.
That's so good, so important as a base for what we're going to be talking about, which is
Mhm.
seven aspects of an effective leader, some qualities of an effective leader. Now, as we get into it, Steve, I mean, one thing comes to mind as we go through kind of a list of some qualities.
Mhm.
Let's say I'm a listener to this podcast, and I hear you talking about a strong private life or the person of character. And I realize as I look in the mirror that that's not me.
Mm.
I'm not there.
Mhm.
And so what about guys, as we go through qualities of an effective leader, what about the gap? What about guys who see these qualities and they say, well, I'm just kind of not there yet, or I've had a failure in my life, or I've screwed up on this. What kind of word, as we get into this list, do we have for those listeners?
Yeah, I would say this, Troy. I'm glad you brought it up because we're all at different places. And as we talked about last week, we're all a leader somewhere. And I think the important thing to keep in mind is that God is at work in your life. You may not know it, you may not see it, you may not realize it, but God is at work. And so wherever you're at, know that God's at work, and that God always takes ordinary people and he does the extraordinary. He always takes us from our point of weakness and brokenness and oftentimes uses that for ministry. This week I'm preaching on the end of John chapter 4, the woman at the well. And we mainly know that passage as, how Jesus interacted with her and he crossed cultural bounds and, initiated. And it's a great passage, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what happens after that. Well, here's this woman with a very poor reputation in the community who's made a lot of mistakes, dropped the ball, and yet I love the passage. I've fallen in love with it because what does she do? She goes right back to the town, to the people that had pushed her out, ostracized her, and she points them to Jesus. And she brings them back.
The whole
village comes back to Jesus. And what's so interesting is the disciples have spent all this time with Jesus, longer than anyone else. They knew him better than anyone else. They hadn't brought anyone to Jesus. And here she is, a person who had been just ostracized because of her lifestyle, and yet God chose to use her to bring the gospel to all these people. It's a remarkable story. But you know what? God does that all the time. He does that with every one of us. And so for that person, that man or woman who's saying, oh man, you wouldn't believe what I've gotten into, what I've done, what I've said, or whatever, I just say, God, failure is never final. And that God took this woman and he forgave her past. And then he set her on a course for something new. And that's what he wants to do in every one of our lives.
Yeah, that is such a good word for us to remember that grace covers all of this.
Yeah. Yep.
And guys,
yeah, that's really good.
If you're looking at this as a checklist for your leadership, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It is a list of some qualities of an effective leader and some things to perhaps strive towards or pray about or examine your own leadership. But it's not the definitive end all be all of whether you're a leader or not.
Yeah, that's really good, Troy. And to keep in mind that the reason we're doing these podcasts is to help you to grow in your leadership. None of us have arrived. Troy and I have not arrived.
Yeah.
We're doing this as much for ourselves as we are for you. And so as we talk about each one of these things, neither one of us is going to sit here and say, oh, I've got that one down or I've got that one down. No, we're constantly learning. And there's the principle, friends. The principle is that when a leader stops learning, they stop leading. That we need to constantly be at the foot of the cross saying, Jesus, I surrender to you. Take me and mold me and shape me and make me into the person leader you want me to be. And all these are just some guidelines for you to think about to hopefully help you to become more effective in your leadership.
Well, that's so good. So Steve, with that caveat, let's get into it.
Yeah.
what are some of the qualities that you've seen in effective leaders?
Yeah, I think the first one is, I think we have to start here, and that is a strong private life. Jesus said it best in John 15, 1-8. He said, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will bear fruit. And what you see through scriptures is that there's a link, there's a relationship between intimacy with Jesus and influence for Jesus. And we really, Jesus said, you cannot do anything apart from me. And that we have to have that vital union with him, where we're walking with him, listening to him, having our souls nourished by him. And so it's just that because what we do in private determines what we do in public.
Yes. Yeah. So how do you approach that? I mean, what?
Well, Troy, let me ask you this. Both of us come out of the athletic world, you more than me. And so as an athlete,
Well, I was never in the Elmbrook Little League.
Okay, yeah, that's right. I was never in the NFL, but as an athlete, just think about this. This is for me at least, and probably for you too. It's just an easy, natural analogy here. We all dream of playing on the NFL on Sunday afternoons, or playing in the World Series, or being playing in the NBA. But you don't wake up in the morning and just say, "I'm going to play in the NFL," right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a get up every day, and how can you take the step towards the goal, right?
Yeah.
How can you follow the plan? How can you obediently pursue what God has in store for you? What is in front of you, directly in front of you? It might mean I need to carve out a little bit of time in the morning for prayer. It might mean I need to get into a small group myself. I need to be discipled. I need to disciple other men. I need some aspects of my life to change. What are those steps that I need to take?
Yeah.
Right. So it's never instant, and it's a step-by-step journey that we're all on.
Yeah, I think from your experience, my experience, I think especially with working with the Brewers for all those years, what people don't realize, if there's a 7:00 game at night, they're at the stadium at 2. And all that time from 2 to 7 is prep. It's all in private. No fans are in the weight room. No fans are in the stadium watching them run the stairs or run in the outfield. They're not watching them doing their hand-eye coordination drills. They don't see them in the batting cage. They don't see them watching film. They don't watch them going over every single pitch they threw or every single pitch they took. It's all done in private to prepare them for public. It's what we see in the life of Jesus, right?
Yeah.
That we marvel at his teaching, the miracles and all that. And yet it says in Mark, he often withdrew to a lonely place to be with the Father. And it was in those times when he just was able to connect his heart with the Father's heart. And so, the principle is the closer you get to God, the greater the impact you'll have for God. So to land the plane is, guys, is just, that'll be a little bit different for each one of us, but to find what are those things, those disciplines, those habits, those regiments we can build into our life, not legalistically, but that will bring us life, that connect us with Jesus. And so the word or prayer or silence or taking a walk or journaling, lots of different, what we would call spiritual disciplines. Guys, you have to find out what works for you.
Yeah. I know for a lot of leaders, this is a developing edge.
It is.
A lot of leaders have been put in place because they're great people. They are extroverted. They are charismatic. They like the crowds. They like the big events. This runs counter to that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. I think it was Gordon MacDonald in his great book, Ordering Your Private World, which I would recommend highly because it has to do exactly with this. Gordon says this: we become too public world oriented today. And I just love what that, I mean, and that's exactly what you were saying, is that we're doing the social media thing. We want to be up front preaching and teaching, and, we're leading the worship and leading our men's ministry. And we want that public fame, but it's what happens in private. And I see so many leaders, pastors, leaders today who get so busy with ministry that they forget the one who they're ministering for.
Yeah.
So I think, as one writer put it on leadership, he said, so often the way we're doing the work of the ministry is ruining the work of the Lord in our hearts. And I think for so many leaders, and I know we're going to talk about this down the road, challenges, but that's one of the challenges and obstacles. Yeah.
So just to summarize, that first quality that you bring up of effective leaders is a strong private life with a link between the intimacy with God and the impact you will have for God. The leadership principle, as you said, is the closer you get to God, the greater the impact you will have for God. Leaders, that's something to hold on to. How many times have you wanted to impact your world for Christ, but struggled to take the first step? Well, you are not alone. Our latest resource, Disciple Maker 101, is designed to help you become a disciple who makes disciples. This self-paced online course will provide you with practical tools to help you identify men in your sphere of influence, equip you to share your faith story, and practical tips to invest in the life of others by leading a small group. To become a disciple maker, visit noregretsmen.org. Again, that's noregretsmen.org, and click on Become a Disciple Maker. What's the second one that you have on your list?
Yeah, second quality I have, Troy, is something we've talked about, but we just wanted to make sure we covered it, and that is we are people of character. What's character? Someone once said that character is who you are when no one is looking. When you're in private, the hotel room by yourself, when you're in a sales trip, or when your family's gone to bed and you're in your study and you're doing some work. It's just who you are, what the things that you think about, the things that you say, the things where your mind goes, the things that you do. But it's who we are as a person. And I just love, I've quoted this person more than anyone in my life. The great Scottish preacher, Robert Murray McCheyne, says this: the greatest gift you can give your people is your personal holiness. He was speaking to seminary students at that time when he said that years ago. And I think the greatest gift we can give our family, we can give our friends, our small group, our church, our work colleagues, is our personal holiness. They just want to see God. They want to see Jesus in us, right? And over 120 times in the New Testament, we're told to become like Jesus. There's a reason why. and it talks about the fruit of the Spirit. And so, Troy, I know, the scriptures are very clear that God is looking for men and women of character.
Yeah, absolutely. So many times we like to focus on the externals, the kind of the tattoos of leadership and the look of leadership. This is about personal holiness, and holiness is separateness, right? In Scripture, Leviticus is all about being separate, right? A whole book on holiness. The greatest gift you can give your people is your personal holiness. It starts there. There's a thing that happens, I believe, with leaders who have that personal holiness, is that it is strongly attractive. Like it is another it's a thing that's different than charisma, but it's like charisma in that when people see your personal dedication, your personal connection with the Lord, your personal holiness and separateness, they want to find out what that's all about. They want to follow you.
I would say there's two. I'm going to land the plane. There's two parts to this. So number one, there is the fruit of the Spirit. there is that daily surrender to the indwelling work of the Holy Spirit in your life. To get up and say, God, I give you my life, and I want you today to work out your life in and through me. And that will be evident through the Holy Spirit's work and through the fruit of the Spirit, gentleness, kindness, love, that those qualities of the Spirit are being manifest in our life. But then there's also the other part of it is the temptation and the sin part. And I think what David prayed in Psalm 139, he said, Lord, show me if there's any offensive way in me. Show me if there's anything that's not consistent with who you are. If there's an area in my life that's drifting from what you would desire. And so leaders, the application is to, when you're in the Word in the morning and you're spending time with God, is to say, God, shine the light of your holiness into my life and show me if there's any offensive way in me. Where am I not consistent with what you would want? Help me. Where am I not being an accurate reflection of Jesus to the world, to my family, to my friends, and at work? Is there something in my speech? Is there something in an attitude? Is there something in an action? Is there something in a thought life? But whatever it is, but we have to have our hearts that are pliable and open to being changed and convicted. That's one of the roles of the Holy Spirit, is to convict us of our sin. And so on the one hand, we're seeking to allow the Holy Spirit to build out, to manifest the fruit of the Spirit in our life. And then there's also the other part of saying, okay, what is that the flesh, the old nature that I'm still feeding, that I need to stop feeding so I can grow here? Yeah. It's a both and, I think.
Yeah, I love that, Steve, the two aspects, the daily surrender and then the kind of the confession, the showing of any inconsistencies. And the picture that I get in my mind there, as you talk about a person's character, is a road, and the daily surrender is like the center line on the road that you're trying to follow and stay in your lane, and the show me part of it. Show me if there's any inconsistencies. Show me if there's anything that is objective to you, Lord. Those are the ditches. Right? We want to stay out of the ditches and keep it on the road. Right? Nothing is more important than our character and who we are. It's going to speak louder than whatever it is we do. And I think about situations that every leader experiences, which brings us to our knees when we fail.
Yeah.
When the event
we
fails,
all do.
When the event fails, when our leadership team isn't what we thought it was, when something just doesn't work out, this is where our character is revealed, right? How we respond to it. Are we blaming people? Are we pointing fingers? Are we taking responsibility? Are we stepping up, owning it? Are we moving forward? Are we directing people towards, well, what is God trying to teach us through this? I think in failure, our character is revealed more than any other time as leaders.
Yeah, I agree. All right, how about let's move on to number 3.
Yeah.
And for that, I'm going to say it's the third quality that I see in effective leaders, that they have significant exposure to others. And there's a number of components of that which we're going to get to. But to understand as a leader, you can't go it alone, that you need others in your life that are going to encourage you, pray for you, guide you. I think there's different types of relationships that we need. First, I'd say we need some mentors. We need some people in our life who will help us with our roles, our souls, and our goals. And the mentor is someone that's a little bit ahead of us, someone that is that has gone the way that we can ask questions of, someone that wants to put wings on our back. And I think we've done whole podcasts on this, on mentorship. Yeah. But we need, as a leader, people that we can talk to. I have a number of mentors in my life that I'm talking about leadership issues, or talking about spiritual growth issues, or family issues, or work issues, or leadership issues, or whatever. But that we have those type of leaders, people in our lives. You know, it was again, I think it was Howard Hendricks, and one of the Promise Keepers in 92, 93 said, every man needs three types of people in their life. They need a Paul, a Timothy, and a Barnabas. Paul is that mentor type that's been ahead of us. But then we also need a Barnabas. That's the person that's our peer, right? And that's the person that's not impressed with us. That's the person who we get together with maybe in a small group on a regular basis, where they don't care for a pastor, they don't care for a CEO of an organization, they don't care for running the men's ministry. They just want to get to know us. That's the Barnabas. And they're the people that will ask us the hard questions in life. They're the ones that will hold us accountable. And I know accountability is a nasty word in our society today. And no one wants to talk about being accountable.
Mm.
And yet, it is so important.
Yeah.
And I define accountability as giving one or more people the right to help you order your public and private life, that you allow them in. It's not forced, it's not contrived, it's not, checking the fruit or being a fruit inspector. It's you've said, listen, I need help to grow in this area. I need to lose some weight, or I need to be in the Word, or I need to work on my tongue. I need to deal with my attitude towards someone. And say, would you help me to do that? Will you pray for me? Will you encourage me? Will you ask how I'm doing in this area? They're going to walk alongside of you. You know, they have your best in mind. They love you. They want you to go. And so that's the Barnabas that's there for us day in and day out. Mm-hmm. And then there's also the Timothy. That's the person we're building into. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. Right. But you know what? Tell me, Troy, for all the years you've been in leadership, what are some of those significant relationships you have had that have helped you to stay in leadership and to grow in leadership and to be effective in leadership?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And let me just say, listeners, if you need to pause this podcast and back it up a couple minutes, Steve is just landing on some really important topics that are just gold, absolute gold. Having mentors, having peers, and having men that you're pouring into. As we talk about those things, I think about Steve, hearing you preach and teach on them, and then thinking about my own life and the men who have poured into me. I've been very fortunate to have coaches who inspired me,
Mm-hmm.
coaches that rebuked me, coaches that called me short, called me up short,
Yeah.
and coaches that encouraged me. And that is a powerful thing when an older man or a more senior man puts his hand on your shoulder and says, "You're good.
Yep.
You've done a good job."
Gosh.
And I've had that blessing, and it is inspiring, and it has propelled me, and it continues to propel
Yeah.
me. Let me make an observation about something you talked about. You just mentioned something very important, that you're still meeting with mentors,
Mm-hmm.
and you've been a pastor, a leader, speaking on these topics for more decades than I can describe.
Yeah.
But you're still looking for this.
Yeah,
You
for sure.
still have the heart of a learner, and you still need this, guys.